Lawyers of Reddit, what is the dumbest thing your client has ever done? Wore a shirt that said natural born killer on it to a hearing. For an assault charge. I had him turn it inside out. He went down anyway, but at least it was for, actually assaulting someone, rather than the shirt. My all-time favorite is a client I had who was charged with driving under the influence, aka DUI, who wanted to challenge the charges on the grounds he didn't think he was drunk and the test was administered improperly. Who appeared at his court hearings rip-roarin' drunk. Twice. And then, both times, he got into his car and tried to drive away. And both times, the police promptly stopped him, administered a breathalyzer and charged him with DUI and related offenses. We didn't win that case. Told a client, don't say anything to the police, wait until I get there. Confesses to a crime he wasn't being investigated for. Though was relayed to me by the RP manager, individual stores didn't have RP managers, they existed at the district level, of the office supply chain I worked for in high school. A young man, let's call him Eric, had been with the company for almost a year. He worked in office supplies and was, by this time, known to management to have light fingers. At some point the store manager called young Eric into his office to discuss his continued employment with the company. When Eric entered the room there was a strange man who was introduced as the RP manager for the district. The conversation from the RP manager was very short, hoping to elicit a confession to the pens they knew he had stolen. Eric, we know what's been going on. If you tell us all about it we'll promise not to press charges against you. Eric just about crapped himself and proceeded to spill all the details. The assistant manager was bringing in additional software, packing it in empty boxes of printer paper and selling the printer paper to his friends and somehow writing off the software as stolen or returned. Eric's job was to fetch the boxes from the back when the friends came to pick them up. Not my client, but I was on the prosecutor's side when a defendant failed to appear for court. His attorney can't reach him, nobody know where he is, so we all sit there for about half an hour, until the judge gets sick of it and moves on with the docket. We found out later that day that the defendant decided to rob a 7-Eleven the night before and was sitting in jail 2 counties over when he should have been in court. Well, he did need money to pay his lawyer. Would a 7-Eleven really cover that? Granted, I've never had to hire a lawyer before, but would have at least gone for a liquor store or something. I used to represent patients who were involuntarily committed because of a mental illness. So I wouldn't describe them as dumb, but still. Clerk, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Client, no. This happened a dozen different times. Had a client show up to a child custody hearing high on methamphetamine. When she arrived, she began screaming at the judge and demanding that her no-good meth head baby daddy be drug tested. I took her in the hallway and told her that if the judge ordered a drug test for the dad, he would have to order one for her. End of argument. Worked for the public defender's office and met a client in jail for a lineup that he had adamantly demanded regarding a crime with multiple witnesses. I met the client for the first time in a separate room to let him know how it would go down and what to expect. This is the kind of lineup you traditionally see on television where there are a number of similar-looking people standing shoulder to shoulder in front of mirrored glass. They pull the people for the lineup from the jail population and despite their best efforts this is not a huge population. I walk in to meet the client and he has a sty on his left lower eyelid the size of a golf ball. It was the most identifiable mark on a human's face I have ever seen. He still demanded the lineup and was identified instantly by every single witness without a shred of doubt in their mind. He still demanded a trial and the sty was gone by the time the trial commenced. TL, doctor, guy with golf ball-sized lump on face demands comparative lineup. I had one of these. Defendant robbed his friends at gunpoint in their home wearing a Halloween mask he had shown them the day before and wearing a short-sleeved shirt that displayed his distinctive sleeve of tattoos. Facepalm. Judge was determining if a defendant qualified for a public defender. Judge, sir, do you have any income? Defendant, yes, Your Honor. Judge, from what source do you have income? Defendant, selling marijuana, Your Honor. Edit, this happened in Illinois, and the defendant was not under oath. Honesty is the best policy. Unless it involves telling a judge you sell weed for a living. When I was sitting for appointments one time a defendant said, hustling as his source of income. Added, everyone in the courtroom laughed a little, even the judge. I represent clients before the IRS. Had a couple who owed around $250,000 in back taxes. We had no defense, so the only thing to do was have the clients meet with the IRS and plead for leniency. Well, the wife got arrogant with the IRS agent, and at one point stood up and screamed at the IRS agent, who was a pretty decent person, making a very middle-class wage, "You'll take away my Mercedes over my dead body." Then she stormed out of the conference room. Needless to say, she lost the Mercedes. Not a lawyer, but this happened in court. My dad was suing a customer for non-payment. The judge ruled in his favor for the whole $15,000. The guy he was suing got up to leave, but walked over to my dad and said, "If you think you are going to see a dime of that money, you are a freaking moron. I will kill you first." He then walked away. For a second my dad was worried the guy would get away with the threat, but he didn't worry much because the guy had said it loud enough for the bailiff and the judge to hear. He did not make it out of the courtroom. My dad was a lawyer in the Navy. One of his first big cases was defending a guy accused of falling asleep at his post during Vietnam. My dad was all psyched, delivering what he thought was well-prepared defense to the judge. The judge interrupted him, telling him to turn around and wake up his client. Attorney Servantov process. This is Jen from Judge Grumpyface's office. Your client, who I see is charged with harassing phone calls, left us 87 messages over the weekend. The judge would like a word with you. I had a brilliant gentleman on probation for narcotics trafficking and was not permitted to own/use a cell phone. He went in for a drug test with his probation officer, and his cell rang in his pocket. The parole officer went to take the phone from his pocket and also pulled out a large baggie of cocaine that he brought to his drug test.
A, B and C are drinking and playing cards.
A shoots B with a crossbow, just happened to have one. B staggers out into the street where, naturally, he attracts some attention. A flees. Police follow blood trail back to the scene to find C, my eventual client, mopping up the blood, placing the crossbow bolt in a garbage bag, and generally tidying up. Charged with tampering with evidence. I never understood why his internal housewife took over and kept him from calling 911. She has a restraining order on you. You absolutely cannot contact her anymore. They moved in together. Not my client and not my case, but a colleague was defending a driver in a wrongful death case. The first question at his deposition was, "Please state your name for the record." The driver stood up and started screaming at the plaintiff's attorney and threatened to kill him. That went well. Didn't happen to me, but happened to an attorney I know. Client shows up for prelim hearing on domestic violence petition. Is wearing ratty t-shirt but his attorney doesn't pay attention to it. Attorney starts arguing and sees the judge turning bright red, fuming with anger. Judge asks the attorney if he spoke with his client about courtroom attire. Attorney looks down. Client is wearing a t-shirt that says "I have the dick so I make the rules." Story from a friend of mine. He was defending a guy in court, don't remember what he was charged with. The main witness for prosecution was on the stand, and was asked if she could identify the defendant. She was scanning the courtroom and seemed confused. My friend was already silently celebrating because if she couldn't identify him, he could probably get all charge dropped. As he was mentally adding this case to the win file, he happened to glance over at his client, who had just helpfully raised his hand to make it easier for her to identify him. Even the judge facepalmed on that one. I work as a legal aid lawyer in a Canadian province. I have had many dumb clients, who did many dumb things. Wore a smoke weed everyday t-shirt while attending their drug trafficking/producing trial. Attempted to smuggle cigarettes to their inmate partner via their baby's diaper. Intentionally pooped their pants on the way to court to delay their matter. Denied driving under the influence. Upon search by police, a full highball glass of rum and coke was located in their jacket pocket. Assaulted a girl. Sent her text messages from his phone the next day recalling all the sordid details. I have many more stories that I could tell if there was sufficient interest. The ones I mentioned here all happened in the past couple of months. More stories. One of my first clients was a delirious hobo. When we were meeting at my office, he was ranting and his dentures fell out and landed on my legal pad. He picked them up and put them back in his mouth and continued to rant as if nothing happened. Same guy appeared in court a few weeks later and refused to let the security detail inspect his hobo bindle. He told them he wasn't going to appear without his bindle and left. He was arrested that afternoon for failure to appear. Guy came in and said he wanted to sue Oral-B because their toothbrushes kept cutting his gums. He asked if I wanted to see his evidence. I said no, but he still proceeded to dump a grocery bag of used, slightly bloodied, toothbrushes onto my desk. Another good one. Doing a trial for client in a circuit court about an hour outside of the city I operate in. Client decides to get a cab out there and tells the driver they'll pay them when they arrive. Client arrives in this community and gets the driver to stop at local convenience store across the street from the courthouse. Client proceeds to attempt to steal 5 26-ounce bottles of rum and is promptly arrested and taken into custody. Trial is postponed as we spend the day, unsuccessfully, applying for bail. I am not a lawyer, but this worked out super well for me. I was hit by this 65-year-old drunk lady, who also happened to be on methadone at the time. The cops knew her husband, who was a firefighter, and so they didn't breathalyze or do any tests, and didn't charge her with DUI. My EMTs had said that lady is so drunk, she's going to buy you a ticket to Disney World, which is how I knew that she was drunk at the time of the accident, but I had no proof to bring to the table in the lawsuit because if the cops didn't charge or make notes, then you cannot add it later. So we get to my deposition and she shows up. She argues with me the entire time over my points, and her lawyer keeps having to tell her that she needs to be quiet. Mind you, this lady had ruined my friends and my lives. So I was becoming less than patient with her, calling me a liar when she got off scot-free. She exclaims to my lawyer, even the police report is wrong. What do you mean it's wrong? It has me coming from the wrong place. Where were you coming from? My friend's bar. Really? Did you have any drinks at this bar? Well, yeah. How many? I don't know, they don't charge me, they just keep refilling my class. Cue her lawyer's face palm as this is all on tape. TLDR, lady exclaims that she was drinking and driving when she could have gotten off scot-free. During a divorce, the ex-husband claimed that he didn't make much or any money and wasn't able to pay the child support we were asking him to pay. A few hours after receiving this information, he posts a picture on his public Facebook of a wad of cash, talking about how ballin' he was. Needless to say, his claim didn't hold up after that. At first appearance, a defendant stood there calmly and quietly when the judge was reading his charges and bond information. When the judge asked if the defendant had any questions, the defendant gave the judge the finger and said, "F you, mother fluffer. Go flick yourself." And then proceeded to throw down the microphone and walk away. The judge, who had been on the bench for years, replied, "Well, I guess I'll let you know when my fan club meets." My sister is a public defender. She recently had a shoplifting case where the defendant was caught in possession of stolen goods which happened to match a list, also in his possession, entitled "Stuff to Steal from Walmart." Client was an accountant for a good-size company. During the recession, she was laid off and filed for unemployment, where she claimed she made $200K plus salary. Real salary was $60K. The company received the unemployment claim, investigated, and found out she embezzled millions. So I'm a law student, but I work at a volunteer desk that helps people complete the forms for court. The awful part is I can't give any legal advice since I'm not a lawyer, which means I can't tell these people they don't have a case. However, the stories are great. They're the lady who sues celebrities. She asked me to help her sue Robert De Niro. Someone else helped her with a suit for Matthew McConaughey. She was doing it on behalf of her kids and their fathers for in excess of $100 million. She didn't even know how to spell their names. Then, there's the guy who is suing DirecTV, CNN, Fox, and who knows who else. Apparently, he's the one you have to THNK for putting color on your TV shows and adding animation. He was suing because they hadn't paid him. Ever. Finally, there's the lady who was suing her former employer for giving her too much money on her last paycheck. She told me they did it because they liked her and wanted her to come back. There was maybe $60 extra on the check. She was suing for $10,000. I'm not a lawyer, but the optometrist that I went to had an officer manager that was marking on people's accounts that they got refund checks and crediting the balance, then cashing them herself. She took $50,000 in a year and got caught. When asked why she did it, she said, "No one told me I couldn't." So I was representing a kid accused of conspiracy to supply crack cocaine. He was accused of acting as a lookout, warning the others whenever the police were approaching. He had a fantastic case and it looked like he was going to win. On the day of trial, he turned up for trial wearing a huge T-shirt with the Warner Brothers logo on. Above and below the WB logo was printed, "If you see the pigs. Warner Brother." He refused to change. "Nah blued, no white boy tells me how to dress." He was convicted. Not a lawyer but a legal secretary. It's illegal to kill crocodiles in Australia, so our client filmed himself and his friends doing it. Funnily enough, they got caught. Going to be kind of hard to disprove a video that clearly shows the animal being killed and subsequent celebration. Plus photos with the carcass. What an idiot. Another guy robbed the pub he worked for, stole the work ute, drove to the city, went straight to the casino, parked the work car in the lot, lost $10,000 playing blackjack, then bought two $500 hookers and was entertaining them when the cops arrested him. Classic. There are probably others, but I've been doing this for 10 years, so they've all blurred together. People are dumb. My client tried to pay a fine with counterfeit money. My high school best friend's father is a lawyer, and I remember him telling me this story years ago. He gets a client who was being charged with a DUI. He asks the client what happened, and the client states that he had 2 drinks, gets stopped, and the police wrongly charged him with driving under the influence. My friend's dad then looked over the evidence as any good lawyer would do. Come to find out, there was video evidence from a dash cam. Awesome. His client on video was visibly drunk, and he described it as being "you'd be stupid to think he was sober." He was convinced there wasn't much he could do with this. There's icing on the cake though. When the police officer went to give him the breathalyzer, his client is heard stating, "I'm too drunk to use this damn thing." I'm a law student, but I have internship stories. We had a client who was convicted of murdering his stepson. Before passing sentencing, the judge asked if he had anything to say to the court. He replied, "I only messed up when I didn't kill my wife too." Life sentence. Another client, upon being pulled over and being asked if he had any drugs or alcohol in the car, voluntarily told the office that he didn't, but did have the heroin he sold in his hotel room. He then kindly escorted the officer there and gave it to him. We had a client charged with selling cocaine. In order to determine if he qualified for a public defender, the judge asked if he had any way he made an income, and he replied, "Well, from selling coke. I bet I can think of more too." Not my client, but I saw this. Accused bank robber at a bail hearing was told by the judge his bond was set at $100,000 and explained to him that meant he could post $10,000 in cash to be released pending trial. He asked the accused if he had $10,000 for bail. The accused replied, "Judge, if I had $10,000 I wouldn't have been robbing the bank." The U.S. attorney asked for a copy of the transcript. Easiest conviction ever.